Go look at it. That cucumber plant you got your eye on, the one that scared you a little this morning, there it stands. One leaf gone limp. Just one, hanging down like a dish rag off the back of a chair. The soil under it is plenty damp. You watered it last night. You watered it the night before. The vine's still green. The little cucumbers are still set on it. But that one leaf has quit. And by tonight, there'll be two. And in a week, that whole hill is going to lay down in the dirt and never get up. You're going to blame the heat. You're going to blame yourself for the watering, or the soil, or the seed you saved. And every one of those is wrong. I'll tell you what really did it, and I'll tell you it was already done weeks ago by a critter no bigger than a grain of cooked rice. Stay with me. This one matters because the window to stop it is open right now in June, and it closes fast. Hi folks, I'm Henry Walker, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, about 70 miles west of Philadelphia. Limestone under the soil, the kind of dirt that'll grow you a cucumber vine clean over the fence if you let it. 45 years working dirt, 30 of those as a Penn State Extension agent for this county. And I'll be honest with you, the thing I'm about to show you fooled me for years. Cost me a whole patch one summer. I stood there and blamed the weather, same as you're about to. So don't feel bad. I've got no high horse to sit on here. Let me take you back to the summer of 1988. I had a row of pickling cucumbers in that year, and I was proud of it. Beautiful stand. Came up thick, dark green, 4 true leaves, climbing the trellis like they had somewhere to be. Then about the 3rd week of June, one plant wilted. Middle of the day, hottest part of the afternoon, and I thought, well, sure, it's 90 degrees out. The thing's just thirsty. It'll perk up come evening. It did not perk up come evening. By morning, it was flat, and the one next to it had started. Within 10 days, I'd lost better than half that row, and I never did get a decent pickle out of what was left. Now, here's the thing I want you to hold in your head, because I'm going to come back to it at the end, and it changed how I garden. I had been spraying. I had been watering deep. I had done, far as I could tell, everything right. And it still went down. So what was killing them? Hold that. I'll tell you exactly how that row ended and what Doc Kowalski said to me standing over it when we get to the close. There's a piece of that story I'm not proud of, and I'll give you that too. But first, let's talk about the critter. Because once you see what it actually does, not what you think it does, the whole thing snaps into focus. We're talking about the striped cucumber beetle, Acalima vittatum, if you want the Latin, and Doc Kowalski always made me learn the Latin. Little fella, about 3/16 to a 1/4 inch long, smaller than a ladybug, smaller than your pinky nail. Yellow, sometimes more of a yellow-green, with 3 black stripes running straight down its back, head to tail. 3 of them. Black head, little black antenna. You've seen him. Everybody who grows cucumbers has seen him. He shows up on the young plants early, and there's never just one. There's a pile of them, crawling on the stems, chewing little holes in the seed leaves, sitting right down in the flowers. And here's where most folks go wrong. They look at those chew holes and they think, well, that's the damage. A few holes in the leaves, the plant will grow out of it, no big deal. And you know what? If chewing was all he did, they'd be right. A healthy cucumber plant can shrug off a fair bit of leaf chewing. That's not the problem. The problem is what that beetle is carrying. Now follow me here because this is the whole video in one idea. That little striped beetle carries a bacterium in his gut. The name of it is Erwinia tracheiphila. It's the germ that causes what we call bacterial wilt. The beetle carries it around alive inside him all winter. He doesn't get sick from it. He's just the delivery truck. And when he chews on your cucumber leaf, he leaves his droppings right there on the wound he just made. Then the dew comes down overnight, or you get a little rain, and that water washes the bacteria out of the droppings and down into the fresh chew wound. And just like that, the germ is inside your plant. I want you to sit with that for a second because it's the part nobody tells you at the garden center. The beetle isn't eating your plant to death. The beetle is infecting it. The chewing is just how he opens the door. Doc Kowalski, that's Professor Michael Kowalski, Cornell trained, taught me more agronomy than the whole rest of Penn State put together. Rest his soul. Doc had the best way of putting it I ever heard. He stood over my dead cucumbers that summer and he said, "Henry, that critter doesn't bite your plant. plant, he injects it. And that stuck with me 30-some years. It's a dirty needle. The beetle's mouth is a dirty needle, and every leaf he chews is another shot. You can have one beetle, two beetles, hardly any feeding damage at all, and still lose the plant. Because it was never about how much he ate. And here's the thing about that beetle that explains why you never find just one. When the first beetles find your young cucumber plants, and they find them by smell, by the scent the plant puts off, the males set to calling in the rest. They give off a signal of their own, what the entomologists call an aggregation pheromone, and it works like a dinner bell. One beetle says, "Found it, boys," and the whole neighborhood comes piling onto that little plant to eat and to mate and to do their business right there on the leaves. So it's not bad luck that they show up in a crowd. They organize it. They send up a flare. That's why a plant that had 2 beetles on it Tuesday can have 20 on it Friday. And that's why you can't dawdle when you see the first of them. The first few are the scouts. The crowd is right behind. Once that germ is inside, it gets into the plumbing of the plant. A cucumber vine moves water up from the roots through little pipes. Think of a bundle of drinking straws running up the inside of the stem. The bacteria multiply in there and they gum those straws up solid. So now the roots are pulling water just fine, the soil's wet, you're out there watering every night like a good gardener, and not a drop of it can get up to the leaves. The pipes are clogged. That's why the leaf wilts in the heat of the day, even though the ground is soaked. The plant is dying of thirst standing in a puddle, and there is no cure. I want to be square with you about that. Once a plant has bacterial wilt, you cannot spray it out, you cannot feed it out, you cannot water it out. The University of Maryland's people put it plain. After the symptoms start, the plant wilts down and dies, generally inside 7 to 14 days. 1 to 2 weeks, start to finish. There's no doctoring it. The only game worth playing is keeping the germ out in the first place. Now, when is your plant in danger? This is the part that ought to light a fire under you because it's seasonal and we are dead in the middle of it. Cucurbits, that's your cucumbers, your melons, your squash, your pumpkins, the whole family. They are most susceptible to this wilt from the time they come up out of the ground right through bloom. Penn State pins the worst of it on the little plants, the seedlings with fewer than 4 or 5 true leaves. That's your danger zone. A young cucumber plant with 3 leaves on it is about as vulnerable as it will ever be. A big sprawling vine in August that's already loaded with fruit can take a beetle hit and mostly carry on. But that little plant in June, one infected beetle can finish it. Now, I'll tell you something that might give you a little comfort, or might help you plan, depending on what you grow. Not every member of the cucumber family is in the same boat with this wilt. The 2 that get hit the hardest are cucumbers and the melons. Your cantaloupe, your muskmelon, the fancy specialty melons. Those are the ones that go down fast and sure. Your squash and your pumpkins are in the middle. They can get it, but they don't take it near as hard. And here's the surprise. Watermelon is just about immune to it. Just about. So if you've had your heart broken by bacterial wilt year after year in your cucumbers, and you've been wanting to grow something in that family that won't punish you, a watermelon is a far safer bet than a cantaloupe. There's also a handful of cucumber varieties that have some tolerance bred into them. The little leaf types, county fair, a few others. And if wilt is your yearly heartbreak, it's worth seeking those out. They're not bulletproof, but they buy you a margin. So look at your calendar and look at your garden. If your cucumbers and your melons are little right now, and in this part of Pennsylvania, mid-June, a lot of them are, you are standing in the open window. The beetles are out. They came out of the ground this spring soon as it warmed up, right around the time the soil hit the mid-50s to low 60s. 54 to 62 degrees is when they get moving. They've been waiting on your seedlings since before your seedlings were up. Out here in Lancaster County, that early warmth comes on right about the time the apple blossom's dropping, and folks are putting their tomato plants out, second week of May, give or take. By the time your cucumber seed is up and showing its first true leaves in late May and into June, those beetles have been awake and hungry for weeks. They didn't come from far off either. They wintered over right here, under the leaf litter, down in the fence rows, in the trash you didn't clean up last fall, as grown beetles with that wilt germ tucked away alive inside them the whole cold season. So when your seedling pokes up, it's not a question of whether the beetle will find it, it's a question of whether you got there first. That's the whole shooting match. first. Let me stop right here and have you do something. Don't get up yet. But after this video, better yet, soon as the sun's not beating straight down, walk out to your cucumbers and your melons and turn a couple leaves over. Look at the undersides, look down in the crotch where the leaf meets the stem, and look right down in the flowers. You're looking for that little yellow beetle with the 3 black stripes. If you find even 1 or 2 on a small plant, that's not nothing. The folks at Maryland will tell you the action threshold on these is about 1 beetle per plant. 1, because so few of them are needed to carry the disease in when the plant's that little. With most pests, you can wait till there's a crowd. Not this one. With this one, a handful is a problem. All right, so that's the enemy, and that's how he works. Now let's talk about what you actually do about it. I've got 3 ways, and I'm going to save the best and the cheapest for last, the way my granddad always made me wait for the good part. The first one, and the simplest, is a cover. A floating row cover. That's a sheet of light white spun fabric, lets the light and the rain and the air right through, but the beetle can't get under it. You lay it over your cucumber and melon beds the day you plant or the day they sprout. You tuck the edges down with soil or boards or a few rocks, and you make a tent the beetles cannot get into. And here's the why behind it. Remember, the danger window is the little plant stage, emergence through bloom. If you can physically keep the beetle off the plant through that whole vulnerable stretch, the germ never gets a ride in. You're not killing the beetle, you're just locking the door while the plant is young and tender and can't defend itself. Now there's a catch with the cover, and it's a big one, so listen close. Cucumbers and melons need bees. They've got separate male and female flowers, and a bee has to carry the pollen from one to the other, or you get no cucumbers, just a lot of flowers and a lot of disappointment. And bees can't get through that cover any more than the beetle can. So the rule is, the cover comes off when the plants start to flower. The minute you see those first blossoms, you've got to open it up and let the pollinators in to do their work. But, and this is a sharp little piece of research I want you to have, the people at Iowa State ran the numbers on exactly when to pull that cover, and they found that if you delay taking it off by about 10 days after flowering begins, you knock the bacterial wilt way down compared to yanking it the first day you see a bloom. 10 days. So the smart way to thread that needle is leave it on as long as you dare into early bloom, then get it off so the bees can finish the job. You're balancing 2 things, beetles out, bees in, and that 10-day window is how you tip it in your favor. That's method 1. Cheap, simple, no spray, and about the most effective single thing a home gardener can do. If you do nothing else this video tells you, do that. Method 2 is a sneaky one, and I love it because it uses the beetle's own greed against him. It's called perimeter trap cropping. Here's the idea. That striped beetle isn't equally crazy about every plant in the cucumber family. There's a squash called Blue Hubbard, big old blue-gray storage squash, and it's loaded with a compound called cucurbitacin, which to a cucumber beetle is about the most irresistible thing on God's green earth. It's bitter as can be, but the beetle can't stay away from it. So what the Penn State folks recommend is you plant a ring of Blue Hubbard squash clean around the outside of your cucumber patch. A border, a moat, if you like. And what happens is the beetles come flying in from the field edges, they hit that ring of Blue Hubbard first, and they pile up on it. They don't bother pushing on into your good cucumbers in the middle because they found their favorite candy right there on the perimeter. Now you've got all your beetles concentrated in one place on the border plants where you can deal with them, knock them down there, treat just that ring, whatever you choose, and leave the main crop in the middle alone. You're sacrificing a border of squash to save the whole inside of the patch. For a home gardener with a decent-sized cucumber bed, that's a heck of a trick, and it costs you nothing but a packet of Hubbard seed and a little room around the edge. Now let me say a word about spraying, because somebody's going to ask, and I'd rather tell you the careful version than have you guess. I'm not much for reaching first for a bottle. 45 years working dirt teaches you the spray is usually the last tool, not the first. But there are 2 materials worth knowing if you decide you need them, especially on that Blue Hubbard border where you've got your beetles concentrated. One is kaolin clay. That's just a fine white clay you mix with water and spray on, and it dries to a powdery film that coats the leaves. The beetle lands on it and he can't get comfortable. It gums up his feet and his mouth parts, and he'd rather be somewhere else. The organic growers put it on roughly twice a week early in the season while the plants are little and the pressure's high, and they keep it up as the new growth comes. It doesn't poison anything, it just makes your plant an unpleasant place to be a beetle. The other one, if you go to an actual insecticide, is a material called spinosad. That's the active ingredient, and you'll find it under more than one label, so read for the ingredient, not the name on the front. Now here's the thing I will not let you forget. Spinosad and the other beetle sprays can hurt bees, and we already established that cucumbers live and die by the bee, so you never ever spray when the flowers are open and the bees are working. If you spray at all, you do it at dusk or after dark when the bees are home. You aim at the base and the stems where the beetles hide and where the disease gets in, and you give it time to dry before the morning foragers come back out. Spray the critter, not the pollinator. Doc Kowalski would have had my hide if I'd done it any other way. And now, the one I saved for last. The most valuable thing in this whole video, and it's the one nobody wants to hear because it isn't a product, and it isn't clever, and it doesn't come in a bottle. It's two old habits put together. Rotate and be ruthless. Rotate first. My granddad, Tobias Walker, farmed this same valley clean through the Depression, and he had a rule he drew out for me one time on the back of a feed store envelope, summer of '68. He said, "Henry, you never plant the same family in the same ground 2 years running. The bugs that ate you last year are still in that dirt waiting on you." Now, he was talking folk wisdom, but the science backs him up cold. Those beetles overwinter. They hole up over the winter as grown beetles, and the bacterium overwinters right inside them. And come spring, where do you think they look first? Right where the cucurbits were last year. So if you plant your cucumbers in the very same spot, you've rung the dinner bell. Move them, far as your garden allows, across the yard, the other side of a barrier, anywhere but last year's cucumber ground. Put a crop the beetle doesn't care about where the cucumbers were. That one move, free as air, breaks the cycle before it starts. And then, be ruthless. This is the hard part. When a plant goes down with wilt, and you'll know, I'll show you how to know in a second, you pull it. That same day. You don't leave it standing there hoping it'll bounce back, because it will not bounce back. There's no cure. You and I already settled that. And here's the part that makes folks gasp. A wilting, infected plant is a loaded gun. It's full of bacteria, and every beetle that lands on it to feed picks up a fresh dose and carries it straight to the next healthy hill. That sick plant you're leaving up out of hope or laziness is a gas station for the disease. So you pull it, you bag it, you get it clean out of the garden. I know it hurts. Pull it anyway. Now, how do you know for sure it's bacterial wilt and not just a thirsty plant on a hot day? Because they can look the same for a minute. There's a test, and it's the simplest thing in the world. My grandson Sam, he's 12, he did it himself last summer, and his eyes about popped out of his head. You take a wilted stem, you cut it through with your knife, low down near the base. Then you take the two cut ends and you press them together, good and firm, and then you slowly pull them apart. And if it's bacterial wilt, you'll see a string of clear, sticky ooze stretch out between the two cut ends like a little thread of glue. That's the bacteria. That's the germ itself, oozing right out of the clogged up plumbing. Sam pulled those two stem ends apart and watched that thread stretch out, and he said, "Grandpa, that's gross." And I said, "Sam, that's the killer, right there in your hand." If you want another way, cut a piece of stem and stand it in a clear glass of water. You'll see milky strings come streaming out of the cut end into the water. Either way, now you know. And now you pull it. So those are your three. Cover the young plants and pull the cover at bloom. Give it that extra 10 days if you can. Ring the patch in Blue Hubbard and let the beetles have the border. And rotate your ground every year while pulling sick plants the same day you spot them. 3 things. None of them cost much, and the best of them cost nothing at all. Now let me give you the mistakes, because I've made most of them myself, and I'd rather you learn off my dime than your own. First mistake, and it's the big one. It's the one I opened this whole video with. You blame the weather. The plant wilts on a hot afternoon, and you tell yourself it's the heat, it's the drought, it's that I didn't water enough. So you water more. You stand out there every evening with the hose, soaking a plant whose pipes are already clogged solid with bacteria, and all you're doing is keeping the soil wet around a plant that's dying of thirst it can't fix. The water never reaches the leaves. You're treating the symptom and feeding the wrong story to yourself. I'll be honest, I did this in '88. I watered those cucumbers like they were the last cucumbers on earth, and every drop of it was wasted, because the trouble wasn't the soil, and it wasn't the sky. It was a beetle that had already come and gone. Be honest with yourself for a second here. When something in your garden wilts, is your first move to reach for the hose? Hold your answer, because half the fix is just learning to stop and ask why before you water. A wilt in wet soil is almost never a thirst problem. Write that down somewhere. Second mistake, you mess up the timing on the row cover, and there's two ways to blow it, opposite ways. One way is you take the cover off too early, while the plants are still little and there's no flower in sight, because you got tired of fussing with it, and you've thrown the door wide open right in the middle of the danger window. The other way, and this one will really fool you, is you fall in love with that cover and you leave it on too long, right through bloom, real proud of how you've kept every beetle off, and you get no cucumbers at all, because no bee ever got in to pollinate a single flower. Tom Riley, my neighbor across the field, does everything by some video he watched at midnight. Tom left his row cover buttoned down tight clear into July a couple summers back. No beetles, not one. Also, no cucumbers, not one. He came over leaning on my fence, all puzzled, said, "Henry, the plants look great. They're flowering like crazy, and there's nothing on them." I said, "Tom, did you ever take that cover off and let a bee in there?" He just stood there. The cover keeps the bad bugs out, and it also keeps the good bugs out. You've got to open the door for the bees at bloom. Both things are true at once. Third mistake, you let the sick ones stand. I covered the why already, but I'm saying it twice because it's that important and because it goes against every gardener's nature. We're growers. We don't want to pull a living plant. There's always that little voice. Give it a few more days. Maybe it'll come back. It will not come back. And while you're waiting and hoping, that plant is dosing every beetle that visits it, and those beetles are flying your wilt all over the garden. The kindest thing to the rest of your patch is to pull the sick one fast. Granddad Tobias had a line for that, too. He'd say, "A sick sheep that won't get well only makes the flock sick." Same with a row. Hard, but he wasn't wrong. All right, let me take you back to that row of cucumbers in 1988, because I promised you I'd tell you how it ended, and there's a piece of it I owe you straight. I told you I lost better than half that row, and I told you I'd done everything right. Well, I'd done everything I thought was right. I'd been spraying, and here's my confession. I'd been spraying for the wrong thing entirely. I saw chew holes and I figured I had a feeding problem, so I was out there trying to kill beetles after they'd already fed, after they'd already left their droppings, after the dew had already washed the germ down into the wounds. I was locking the barn door a week after the horse was gone, and the one thing that actually would have saved that row, a cover over those little plants the first 3 weeks of their life, I didn't have on because I figured my spraying had it handled. Doc Kowalski came out to look at it because that's what extension men did for each other. He walked the row slow the way he did, pushed his glasses up, cut a stem, did that string test right there in front of me, first time I ever saw it, and pulled out that thread of ooze. And he didn't fuss at me. He just said, "Henry, you fought the wrong war. You can't kill your way out of this one after the fact. You keep the needle off the plant, or you lose the plant. There's no third thing. You fight the beetle before he chews, not after. Keep the needle off the plant." I'll tell you what, out of that whole sorry row, the plants that lived were the 4 at the far end that happened to be sitting under an old window screen Maggie had leaned there to dry. Pure accident. 4 plants under a screen, beetles couldn't get to them, and those 4 were the only cucumbers I canned that year. Maggie still brings it up. She says, "So you're telling me my dirty window screen outgardened the county extension agent?" And I have to say, yes, Maggie, that summer it surely did. I've grown cucumbers under cover every year since, going on 30-some years, and I have never had that wilt take a patch from me again. Not once. The dirt taught me, and so did a window screen. So let me burn the 3 things into your head before I let you go. Number 1, the striped cucumber beetle doesn't kill your plant by chewing it. He infects it. He carries the wilt germ in his gut, he leaves it on the chew wound, the dew washes it in, and the plant dies of clogged up plumbing inside 1 to 2 weeks, with no cure. It was never about the holes. Number 2. The danger window is the young plant stage, emergence through bloom, worst of all under 4 or 5 true leaves. That is right now in June for most of you. So the whole job is keeping that beetle off the little plants through that window. Cover them, ring them in Blue Hubbard, watch them like a hawk, and treat 1 beetle per plant as a real number, not nothing. Number 3. When a plant goes down, do the string test, confirm it, and pull it that same day. Rotate your ground next year so you don't plant cucumbers where the overwintering beetles are already waiting. You can't cure the wilt. You can only keep it out and clean it up fast. Now, do me a favor before you click off. Go on out there today and turn over a few cucumber leaves and look in the flowers. Tell me in the comments what you found. Are you seeing those little striped fellas already, or is your patch still clean? And while you're at it, I want to know how you do it where you garden. Are you a row cover gardener, or are you a trap crop gardener? Team cover or team Blue Hubbard? I'm honestly curious which way folks lean because there's no one right answer. It depends on your patch and your patience. And tell me where you're watching from. The state, the county, even just out past Pittsburgh or up in Vermont, because when these beetles come out depends a whole lot on your spring, and I read every one of those comments. I do. Next time, I want to talk about the cousin of this critter, the squash bug, and a wilt of its own that hits the squash and pumpkins, and why the fix there is different than what we did today. There's a thing about where that one hides its eggs that surprised even me back in the 90s, the first time I really got down and looked. Stick around for that. To close out, here's a quick one. Maggie says, I collect these stories like other folks collect baseball cards, but I write them all down in my notebook anyway. My grandson Sam, the same summer he did that string test, he went out the next morning, real serious, came back and announced he'd found a striped beetle and executed the threat, his words, and would I like to inspect the body? I went out to look. He'd very proudly caught and dispatched a perfectly innocent little hoverfly. Yellow and black stripes, see, to a 12-year-old, close enough. I sat him down, and we looked at the two of them in a jar, side by side, and I showed him the hoverfly hovers and helps, and the beetle crawls and chews, and how the beetle's got 3 clean stripes down his back, and the hoverfly's all banded up. He took it hard for about a minute. Then he said, Grandpa, I should have done the string test on the bug, too. And I laughed so hard, I had to sit down on the wheelbarrow. There's no string test for a bug, Sam, but you keep that thinking. That's the whole game right there. Look close, know your critter, don't swing at the wrong one. You folks take care now. Wishing you a fine harvest and an easy row to hoe. Be well.